Hello, everybody. I'm Suzette Martinez-Standring, and welcome to It's All Right with Suzette, a half-hour show about authors and their works. And today, we have a wonderful humorist. Laughter is so healing, isn't it? And so we have Jerry Zezima, whose book we will feature today, The More the Merrier, Laughing at Life When Everyone Thinks You're Over the Hill. Jerry's been a past guest on this show and very popular. This is going to be his 8th book. His humor columns run in the Stamford Advocate and nationally through Tribune News Service. Jerry, it's so great to have you today.
Well, Suzette, thank you very much for being so brave to ask me back and for lowering your otherwise high standards. So I appreciate it.
Oh, Jerry, I'm telling you, love and laughter, and it is embodied in your life's work in writing, and I'm really excited to have you today. So tell us about The More the Merrier. What is it about?
It's about 180 pages, but it's I think it's a funny look at life, finding humor and positivity, not just in aging, because I'm a geezer, but in life itself. And I think it's something that the kind of humor and the kind of book that a lot of people, not just baby boomers, can relate to.
Well, I really loved it. And I particularly, you have a whole array of topics. Every chapter is lights on another subject.
Right.
Things from endless doctor's appointments to your mother's 100th birthday, proving that humor is a great medicine. Yep. Renting a cow of sorts.
Yeah. And
lugging AC units around. But I'd like to know, what are some of give me a couple of examples of your favorite stories.
The first one in the book is when I turned 70. I'm now 71. The day after I turned 70, I got an email urging me to buy burial insurance. So a lot of people would be unnerved by that. They'd be insulted by that. They'd be upset by that. I thought it was great. So a little light bulb went off in my head because there's nothing else up there. And I said, there's a column. But I kept getting these emails for, hernia mesh implants, walk-in bathtubs, knee replacements, that kind of stuff. And my wife, Sue, the love of my life, without her, I would be either dead or in prison. She got these things too. So we kind of kidded each other about it. And I said, there's a column.
There are so many things that I relate to, especially at this time. The relentless doctor appointments. I mean, I try to be an advocate for my own health, but inside my mind, I'm thinking, I will not allow my life to become one endless Excel sheet of appointments and medications. You want to talk a little bit about that yourself?
I don't read those things because I don't give a sheet. So I let the doctors take care of that. However, I found that doctor's appointments are my social life now. So going to doctors. Fortunately, I'm in pretty decent health. One of the stories in the book, the columns, was how last year at this time, I was supposed to have open heart surgery. Yes. And so I was told I had this aortic aneurysm. And they said, you're going to need open heart surgery. Because I guess the aneurysm, it wasn't quite large enough to be a balloon in the Thanksgiving Day parade, but it was still pretty sizable. And so I said, okay. The cardiac surgeon said, I'm like a plumber. So I said, well, are you going to do this at Home Depot? And he said, no, we're going to do it in an operating room. But he went through all the rigmarole, and I had to take all these tests, blood tests and everything, everything except an algebra test, which I never would have passed. So the afternoon, late in the afternoon, before the surgery, which was early the next morning, I got a phone call from the surgeon. And he said, I have good news and bad news. I said, well, what's the good news? He said, you don't need surgery. I said, you got to be kidding. He said, no. I said, well, what's the bad news? He said, all these tests, I had like 47 tests I had to go through before the surgery. He said, you didn't really need to go through all that, except the last test, which was a more comprehensive scan, showed that the aneurysm wasn't large enough to operate on. Yeah, so this is like literally the 11th hour. So then he said, do you have any questions? And I said, yeah. He said, what? And I said, do you mean to tell me all the sympathy I expected to get during the 6-week recovery period is out the window? He said, yeah, I'm afraid so. But anyway, so.
Gone.
Yeah. But again, there's a column. I mean,
Absolutely.
almost anything that happens, if you survive it, you can write about it. And so I try to find the humor in everything, including difficult things like that. So that's one of the stories. I
completely agree with you, Jerry. I mean, many of my viewers know that I've been managing, stage 1 lung cancer for about 6 years now. Mm-hmm. And there is so much humor to be mined.
Yes.
When I'm not moaning and whining through the house like an apparition, there is so many funny things. Years ago, a good friend, a comedian friend of mine, Marianne Nunez, once said, dress well, cancer is a very expensive disease. And I find so much humor in your book, too. Now, tell me something. I think a lot of these stories are based on your actual columns.
Yes.
Yes. And this is your 8th book, Jerry.
Right.
And I have found that you went from empty nesting, a book about empty nesting, Leave It to Boomer,
right.
To now being the grandfather.
Yeah.
And a retiree and all of that. And it's been a wonderful evolution, revealing your life and the humorous insights that you have. Tell me, when you write your book, what is it that you're hoping that the reader takes away?
Well, I don't want them to take away the book unless they go on Amazon to buy it. And by the way, this is why I'm not in sales. There's the book. There you go. The more the merrier. Anyway, I would like them to take away what we discussed earlier, which is that you can find humor and positivity in just about anything. And, not just aging, because I acknowledge that, a lot of my readers are in, are baby boomers, let's say, but even younger people, because the younger generation would be our children. And they can relate to a lot of what's in the book and a lot of what I write about. But also, it's not just about family. I tell people I write about family foibles and the funny little things of everyday life. And just for example, I mean, we didn't have any hot water for a couple of days. And the water would have given a polar bear cardiac arrest. So we called the heating company. The guy came over to clean the furnace and all that. And in talking, he was telling me, "Oh yeah, I used to work the night shift, and a guy pulled a gun on me at a gas station. He was he had to get the diesel for a customer and bring it back to the customer's house. And he said I had jerry cans. And I said, well, in my house, the bathroom is the jerry can. So he rolled his eyes, but he told me that the guy had an empty gun. He just tried. He said, it's my birthday. I want to go in and buy some Four Loko, which is a drink with booze in it, I guess. But and just talking to this guy, he was telling me all these funny, crazy stories. And again, there's a column. So you could find a column almost anywhere. My wife, Sue, pardon me, for one of the very few times ever, my car was unavailable, so she drove me in her car to our daughter's house. And Sue thinks I drive too fast. Our daughter, who is an aspiring Formula One champion, thinks I drive too slow. So I think I'm perfect. But for one of the few times in 47 years, I was a passenger and I was a backseat driver. So I got, a column out of that. I mean, it could be almost anything. And I think a lot of people relate to this. They say, that's happened to me.
Jerry, you touch on the craft of humor writing, and clearly you're a master of wordplay and puns. You really are. But
I'm punning a million. That's what.
But I honestly don't think that it's everybody's jam. However, all good writing, even great conversation, is made better with humor. So and I know that you're going to be giving a workshop through the National Society of Newspaper Columnists on injecting humor, inserting humor into your work. So it comes easily to you. It's a natural extension of your personality. But for those people who want to enliven their writing with a little bit of humor or whatever, what kind of practical advice can you give to them?
Well, you can find humor in almost anything, and it's always about the story. And for example, I mean, one of the most serious things you can think of would be a funeral, right? Someone dies, you love the person, people get together. It's a sad time, but then people start to reminisce and they start telling stories, and some of the funniest stuff comes out of that. So if you're writing, say, something serious, a serious piece about sports, music, business, medical stuff, you still can enliven it or lighten it up with a quick story or a play on words. You don't have to overwhelm it. I mean, I acknowledge I'm a flat out humorist. I'm spectacularly unqualified to do anything else. I've been doing this for 40 years because no one has stopped me. But I do think that even more serious writers can use humor. It's a tool, and it doesn't have to overwhelm an otherwise serious piece, but you can, it adds more of a balance to your writing if it naturally fits in. So, let me say this. If you are a humor writer, a sports writer, a business writer, a food writer, a medical writer, whatever, the key word there is writer. And you really have to write well. Humor is the most subjective kind of writing. What's funny to one person isn't to another. So someone might say, well, I didn't think that was particularly funny, but at least you write well. So I think that's half the battle.
I agree with you. And the genius in humor writing really is that it seems so effortless. It comes off so spontaneous. And yet a lot of time can be devoted to keeping things punchy. And I remember Dave Barry once gave the example that it's not enough to be, if you really want to excel as a humor writer, it's not enough to chuckle or to find that amusing. It has to be laugh out loud funny. And for when you're working on something, your columns, your chapters are very punchy. They're very condensed and funny. How do you do that? I mean, what do you? They say it's easier to write long than it is to write short. So, do you have a piece of advice for keeping it on track and keeping it really funny?
Well, if you're writing a column or an essay and you pretty much have a word count, then that discipline can be helpful. Most writers hate deadline, but deadline is our friend. And a word count, if you're writing for a newspaper or a magazine or a blog or something, and you want to keep it short, then you're almost forced to use your best stuff in that short space. However, and I know I've been guilty of this, like one too many, puns or whatever, but you really need to be disciplined to the shorter form. And it can be more difficult than the longer form. Let's say you're writing a novel or you're writing something that's long. More than likely, you'll go back and say, there's some fat in this, and you take it out anyway. So it's the discipline of deadline and of knowing that at a certain point you have to stop. And I remember reading that Art Buchwald, and I nominated him, and you gave him the National Society Newspaper Columnist Award, the Ernie Pyle Award, right? And he had said something like, when he was in Paris, I think, before he came back to the United States, he would write his column, but then he would go on vacation. And some novelist friends of his would, fill in and write his column for him. And they said, I don't know how you do this. They are used to the longer form. So it takes more of a discipline to do it in the short form.
Yes, you have to be born that way. You have to be born that way. Definitely, I agree with you. You have to lean towards a more concise, abbreviated form. And that's really good stand-up comedy, good comedy in general. I'll share a little bit about my process. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was when I'm thinking about a funny story, I go right to the moment that makes me laugh. Uh-huh. And I try to get that feeling in my body, what I found so funny, and I write that, and then I write around the edges of it to create a story. Mm-hmm. What's your process, Jerry?
To write around the edges of the of what you're writing
of the funny moment, I mean, you're definitely telling a story.
Right.
And I know that humor is sprinkled all through the sentences of your chapter.
Right.
But you have a really good way of staying with the point. You don't digress, I notice. You stay, if you're talking about your mother's 100th birthday, you stay focused on her.
Right.
And yet, how do you feel the humor within yourself that you're able to convey it in a very real-time kind of fashion?
I think it's just telling a story. Now, if you're a humor columnist, humorist, you want to be funny, obviously, as Dave Barry had said and is, but I don't think it serves yourself, the writer or the reader well, to make it like a stand-up comedy routine, because then it's just joke, 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 and it's not a real piece of writing unless you're a master at it. I prefer to tell, stories either about what's happened to me and my wife or other people. So if I write about other people, it's always with a positive spin. And if I have a bad experience, I just don't write about it. But there are a lot of things that you have to leave out. Now, the guy I told you about who came over to clean the furnace, young guys, 27 years old, but I don't know how it started. We started talking about the Three Stooges and how he's a big Three Stooges fan, and his brothers are, he's like Moe, and one of his brothers is like Larry, and the other one's like Curly. And I said, well, what about Shemp? I love Shemp. And I said, oh, that's going to be part of the column. And it wasn't, because I had to leave it out. So, in writing around the edges, there are some things that need to escape the edges in order for you to home in on a topic and what you're writing about, and trying to find the humor in that.
Wonderful. So, that's great. That's great advice, Jerry. And I want the viewers to know that, as we mentioned earlier, this is your 8th book.
Yes.
And let me brag on you a little bit, Jerry. I just wanted to read the titles of your past works, because I really feel they would make terrific gifts. Everybody can use a little time with laughter. So I'm going to read it from your most previous books.
Right.
So, The Good Humor Man, Tales of Life, Laughter, and for dessert, ice cream. One for the Ageless, How to Stay Young and Immature Even If You're Really Old. Every Day is Saturday, Sleeping Late, Playing with the Grandchildren, Surviving the Quarantine, and Other Joys of Retirement. And I especially love this because it was your way of keeping us company during COVID.
Yeah.
Nene and Poppy's Excellent Adventures, Grandkids, Wine Clubs, and Other Ways to Keep Having Fun. Grandfather Knows Best, A Geezer's Guide to Life, Immaturity, and Learning How to Change Diapers all over again. And ain't that grand, huh, Jerry?
It is.
I love this one, The Empty Nest Chronicles, How to Have Fun and Stop Annoying Your Spouse After the Kids Move Out. Now there's a good primer.
Yeah.
Leave It to Boomer, a look at life, love, and parenthood by the very model of the modern middle-aged man. And that brings us to the More the Merrier, laughing at life when everyone thinks you're over the hill. Do you have a favorite child in all of those books, Jerry?
Do I have a what?
Do you have a favorite child? One of your books is your favorite.
Writers get asked that all the time. And the correct answer is I love them all. However, I do think that the most substantive one probably is the new one. Because the more the merrier, laughing at life when everyone thinks you're over the hill. Again, I'm not in sales, so I'm not very good at this, but you can get it on Amazon and all those other books too. And the reason is that I've kind of come full circle, which is easier than coming full trapezoid. And this one has, chapters that people of my age group can really relate to, including one on grandchildren. Now, I've written about our grandchildren before, but I think this is the most substantive one, and the fact that it is dedicated to my mother, who's 100. I mean, next month in November, she'll be 101, and yeah, she's still going strong. I tell people she's sharper than I am, although so are houseplants, but that's another story. But I do really, truly like this one. And I like them all. There's some that, like the second one, The Empty Nest Chronicles, and the fifth one, Every Day is Saturday, there's more stuff that I wrote just for the book and not just columns that I had previously written or chapters based on columns.
Well, Jerry, that we're going to look forward to looking to reading and searching for your books. It's amazing to say that our time with you has come to a close.
Oh my goodness.
And it's been wonderful to see you. And anybody who would like to look for Jerry Zezima's great books, his last name is spelled Zezima. And you can also read his work on his blog, www.jerryzezima.blogspot.com. Look for his books on Amazon. And in the minute that we have left, anything you'd like to say to the viewers, Jerry?
I would like to say to the viewers, maintain your sense of humor. You know, the old saying, laughter is the best medicine. It's also the cheapest. And I think whether you're going through difficult times or not, it's something that helps. I think if you have a good sense of humor and you see the humor in things when they happen, it'll put you in a good mood.
Absolutely.
If you're in a good mood, you might do something nice for someone else.
Absolutely.
It's a cumulative effect.
Yes.
It's small, but it's not insignificant.
It's not insignificant. And humor writers, comedians, they will revolutionize the world. And you're one of the greatest warriors we have. Thank you, Jerry. And we'll see you next time on It's All Right with Suzette. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.